right, so after dropping that video from Peter Jackson and fucking Stephen Colbert, we're going to react to my boy, Nerdrotic. This will destroy Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. We're going to react to this. Horrible news. Let's see what this man's got.
You have not seen what I have seen.
Do you know why a ship floats and a stone cannot?
There is a tempest in me.
Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
How could it get any worse?
Hi, Peter.
Hey, Steven. Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
No!
Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, you over 1 million lovers of good ideas and dislikers of bad ideas, and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Of all the bad ideas we have covered on this channel, from giving the former personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein, Leslie Headland, $230 million to make a Star Wars show about communists, lesbians, and space, to centering an Indiana Jones film around Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and then giving Phoebe Waller-Bridge control of Tomb Raider, to releasing a Flash film with not one, but two Ezra Millers, to producing a Halo show that reveals Master Chief's face and ass, to allowing Alex Kurtzman to destroy Star Trek for 10 years, culminating in a show that featured a gay Klingon in a skirt, to giving a crap load of money to 3 female directors who complained about the lack of female directors, Nia DaCosta, Chloe Zhao, and Maggie, who ended up directing 3 historic flops that sent female directors back decades in Hollywood, to the casting of Black Snape, and to allow a couple of rejects from Jar Jar Abrams' bad reboot, which destroyed.
Oh, look at that. Look, it's Stephen Colbert, guys. That's Stephen Colbert right there next to J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. As if you needed any more evidence that this guy is not a good fit for a Lord of the Rings Tolkien adaptation.
Not one, but 2 franchises with Star Wars and Star Trek, so they could go on and destroy a 3rd with the Rings of Power, which made such bold creative decisions like female Sam, female Frodo, totally not Gandalf, a black female dwarf, Don Lemonlass, Simp Sauron, and turning the epitome of femininity into a dude with Guy Ladriel. Well, I'm here to tell you folks, Warner Brothers, America's dumbest company, might have come up with the worst idea of them all: Stephen Colbert's Lord of the Rings.
What?
That's right. Stephen Colbert is writing a Lord of the Rings movie produced by Peter Jackson.
You gotta be f***ing kidding.
I wish I was, dear viewer, and with the reveal of Black Snape today and Stephen Colbert, Lord of the Rings, it's been my own personal 9/11 times 1,000.
Jesus, you mean?
Yes, 911,000.
And before the Skydance Paramount sale goes through, it seems that Warner Brothers is determined to outsuck Amazon's The Rings of Power, who released the first season of their abomination on the anniversary of Professor Tolkien's death.
And as I have been covering Rings of Power on my channel since my channel has, basically started, it's been about 4 years now. That show has taken a piece of my soul. It has made me bitter. It has made me cynical. It has made me the piece of shit that I am today because of how it bastardizes Tolkien's lore, how it bastardizes all of his works and the man himself. So, yay, more Tolkien slander and less of my mental health.
Oh, not to be outdone, Warner Brothers, America's dumbest entertainment company, and Peter Jackson decided to announce Stephen Colbert's Lord of the Rings on Tolkien Reading Day.
We've actually got another film that we'll be making after Hunt for Gollum. So I thought I should tell you a little bit about that. Oh, actually, why don't I get somebody else to explain it? Because we've got a very special partner that we're working with, and you can see for yourself. Hang on. There we go. Hello.
Oh, come on!
Hi, Peter.
Hey, Stephen. Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Good.
Jesus wept. Stephen Colbert is writing a Lord of the Rings movie produced by Peter Jackson. This can't be real. It hasn't quite sunk in yet. And when I first heard the news, I had to make sure it wasn't April 1st.
Is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
This timeline is bonkers, but I believe I have an explanation. While I hate to agree with Matt Walsh, whose pop culture takes are about as good as my geopolitical takes, he did say that pop culture died in 2008, and he's right, because we have a date. September 10th, 2008, that's a lot of rhyming. I did not intend for that to happen, is when the CERN Large Hadron Collider was turned on for the first time. And obviously, we were sucked through a micro black hole into the retardiverse.
So I was just explaining to the folks about the next Tolkien movie after Hunt for Gollum and the fact that we've partnered up.
Hunt for Gollum is such a stupid movie idea. Why would you even... All this does, whether it's Colbert's movie and what he wants to adapt, or The Hunt for Gollum with Andy Serkis, all it does is diminish how special Peter Jackson's movies are. All it does is take away what made those movies fun, what made them enjoyable, what made them basically comfort food. But this is what Hollywood does. They don't like comfort food. They like money. This is about money. They don't care about Tolkien. They don't care about the fans. This is about maintaining the IP and making money. And as far as I'm concerned, this shit is despicable. Shit is evil. And they think that Tolkien and Lord of the Rings is right-wing coded. So they bring in people like Stephen Colbert, who's famously an authoritarian leftist shill, to correct the Tolkien fans. To make it seem like, well, Tolkien's always been on the left, guys. He's a tree hugger. No. Tolkien actually probably would have hated his politics.
With you to develop the script.
Now, the soon-to-be-fired Stephen Colbert said in this completely cringe promotional release that he had been working on this for a couple of years, but I have a theory as to why this is happening now that we'll get to.
You know what the books mean to me and what your films mean to me. But the thing I found myself reading over and over again were the 6 chapters early on in the Fellowship that y'all never developed into the first movie back in the day. It's basically the chapter is 3 is Company through Fog on the Barrow Downs. And I thought, oh, wait, maybe that could be its own story that could fit into the larger story. Could we make something that was completely faithful to the books while also being completely faithful to the movies that you guys had already made?
I'm going to stop you right there. As much as I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy is the greatest trilogy ever made, and it is, it's not exactly accurate to the book. So you would have a hard time being faithful to PJ's Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's story.
And I started talking it over with my son, Peter, who's also a screenwriter.
And you gotta love that Hollywood nepotism. His son, Peter McGee, is indeed a screenwriter. What's his screenwriting credit? This movie and nothing else. Hell, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay had more screenwriting credit than this guy prior to The Rings of Power, and that was just as uncredited writers on a bad Star Trek movie.
We worked out what we thought would work, especially as a framing device for that story.
We worked out what we thought would work, spoken like a true writer.
It took me a few years to scrape my courage into a pile to give you a call, but about 2 years ago I did. You liked it enough to talk to me about it, and ever since then, the two of us have been working with the brilliant Philippa Boyens on how to develop the story.
The very same brilliant Philippa Boyens who helped co-write the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, but her latest work was The War of the Rohirrim, which is better known as The War of the Rohirrim.
A movie I did not see, and I wanted to see it at the time, but after hearing what it basically does to Helm Hammerhand and the people of Rohirrim, or the Rohan and the Rohirrim, I lost interest. I lost interest pretty quickly. And the fact that it was animated kind of threw me off too, making it like this anime style. I didn't really fuck with that. So, I mean, just because it's the old people, it's Philippa Boyens, it's Peter Jackson, just because it's the old people who did the thing that you like a long time ago, bringing them back for a new thing does not guarantee that the new thing is going to be good. If George Lucas bought Star Wars today and decided to make another Star Wars trilogy today, there was no guarantee it would be any different than what Disney Star Wars is right now. Because it's not necessarily about who's making it, it's about their attitude. It's about what they're trying to accomplish. What is the point of them coming back? If they're coming back because they're like, well, I have more stories to tell. But that story is them getting their political basically gripes off their chest and force feeding it into their audience, all they do is destroy their legacy. So there's no guarantee that just because Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens are involved, that this is going to be what it used to be.
where she took a brilliant tale from Tolkien, which were the events that led up to the battle that gave the Hornburg the name Helm's Deep and the final days of Helm Hammerhand, and turned it into a feminist, insufferable girl boss story, taking a character who wasn't even named in the books and making her the girl who is the key to everything.
And we recently took it to Richard Brenner at New Line and Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca at Warner Brothers, and I could not be happier to say that they loved it.
The same Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca who were on the verge of being fired until they were saved by films like Weapons, Sinners, and F1, which is mostly an Apple film. Unfortunately, they also greenlit films like Mickey 17, Joker 2, The Bride, One Woke After Another, which won Best Picture and completely sucked.
I know some people who actually like that movie, and I think they're retarded. I think they're retarded for liking that movie. The minute I saw the trailer for One Battle After Another, I was like, yeah, this is woke propaganda to the highest form, and I'm not interested. Even all the people who love the Oscar bait woke crap, I didn't buy it for a second.
And Superman's James Gunn.
That's what we're going to be working on.
Fantastic. Now, are you sure you've got the time, though? Because
That I did not think I would have the time. As much as I love it, I knew I couldn't do that and do the show at the same time. But it turns out I'm going to be free starting this summer.
isn't that fortunate?
Isn't that a eucatastrophe right there?
Eucatastrophe is a term coined by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is essentially Deus Ex Machina, a sudden miraculous turn of events in a story that saves the protagonist from seemingly inevitable defeat. I would argue this is just a catastrophe. Hiring a politically divisive, washed-up late-night comedian who hasn't been funny in years, and I would argue has never been funny, who has historically been a mouthpiece for the machine and the mouth of Pfizer, who is so...
Boom, there you go. What else do you need? If you're wondering whether or not Colbert is going to force his politics into this new Tolkien project, this new movie, Shadow of, Shadows of the Past, yeah. Yes, he's going to. You know he is.
Bad at his job, Paramount didn't just fire him, they ended Late Night, a show that preceded him. It seems to be a strange choice, and even Deadline pointed out the irony here in this whole deal is that while Colbert is ending his employment with the David Ellison-owned Paramount this May, he'll ultimately be back in business with them once again after they take control of Warner Brothers, which is expected to happen before Q4 of this year. So despite Stephen Colbert saying he's been working on this for a couple of years, my conspiratorial mind wants to think that maybe Peter Jackson decided to stick it to David Ellison due to his perceived associations with a certain president. I mean, what is he going to do? Get rid of Peter Jackson? I know, I'm crazy to think that Hollywood would be that petty. And again, as much as I adore the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think the best thing you can do to preserve its legacy is to cancel this project and The Hunt for Gollum, which are just obvious cash grabs to retain rights. The Hunt for Gollum is just going to come off as a side quest. It's supposed to directly connect to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. You're going to have to recast half of the characters, including Aragorn, or de-age them, and it's going to be based on essentially a couple of chapters, a part of the appendices, the Council of Elrond, and the Shadow of the Past, which will really get confusing because Stephen Colbert's Lord of the Rings is going to be called Shadow of the Past. According to the Hollywood Reporter, it's going to take place 14 years after the passing of Frodo to the Undying Lands. Sam, Merry, and Pippin set out to retrace the first steps of their adventure. Meanwhile, Sam's daughter, Eleanor, has discovered a long-buried secret and is determined to uncover why the War of the Ring was very nearly lost before it even began. Now, Eleanor does get Frodo's red book from Sam after he goes to the Grey Havens, and this entire movie will take place between Frodo and the hobbits leaving the Shire and arriving at the Prancing Pony. Admittedly, a lot happens on that trip, but I'm just not entirely sure how it's going to connect to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, seeing that you've seen some of these chapters in that movie already. And as the soon-to-be-fired Stephen Colbert said, this movie will be based on chapters 3 through 8. 3 is Company, A Shortcut to Mushrooms, A Conspiracy Unmasked, The Old Forest, In the House of Tom Bombadil, and Fog on the Barrow Downs. After Frodo sells Bag End to the Sackville Baggins, he secretly leaves the Shire with Sam and Pippin. They narrowly evade a Black Rider and spend a night sheltered by a band of elves led by Gildor and Glorian. Then they take a shortcut through the marsh fields and head to Buckleberry Ferry, which you've already seen in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. And it's after that in the book they meet Farmer Maggot.
What did you say?
Maggot, Farmer Maggot, and he gives them a delicious dinner of mushrooms and tells them about a black rider. The only problem is they were in Farmer Maggot's farm before they went on Buckleberry Ferry in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Following that, Frodo goes to his new house in Crick Hollow, which is in Buckland, where he tells Merry and Pippin this has all been a ruse and he's going to go off to destroy the ring. Merry and Pippin say they knew all along and they join him. They go to the old forest and get accosted by a tree, Old Man Willow, which was a scene they ripped off for the Rings of Power. Then they're saved by Tom Bombadil and go hang out with him and his smoking hot wife Goldberry. And the film will end with the one chapter that I really wish was in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Fog on the Barrow Downs, where the hobbits attempt a shortcut through some burial mounds, get put under a spell by a Barrow Wight. Frodo breaks the spell long enough to summon Tom Bombadil, who saves them and gives them some swords made by the men of Westoness and some ponies. That's your movie. And that just takes place in the first third of the book. And this will be a sequel to The Hunt for Gollum, which is just filling in the blanks between the 17 years Gandalf left the Shire and returned. But my question is, are both of these movies going to have timestamps where you have to go back and watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and pause and go watch these movies? It sounds confusing and dumb, and this is something that I don't think Peter Jackson would have agreed to even 5 years ago. Hunt for Gollum is going to be directed by Andy Serkis, who I love as an actor, but he directed Venom: The Last Dance. And The Shadow of the Past is being written by Stephen Colbert, and I know he's a big Lord of the Rings fan, so am I, and I shouldn't be writing a movie. And considering this is still Warner Brothers, who just cast Black Snape, how are they going to cast these films? Are we going to get Black Tom Bombadil and Black Goldberry? Is Stephen Colbert going to be able to keep his personal politics out of Tolkien's work? And
you know he's not going to. That's the thing. That's the big thing.
On the red carpet for any promotion, some would say he wouldn't dream of it. That would be preposterous. I would say if you believe that, you're a sweet summer child. It's just more proof that Hollywood is completely out of ideas. And as the AI apocalypse approaches, they decide to fight it with creative bankruptcy. And despite Simon Tolkien being the one who came up with the Sauron should be a Walter White story, I have to give some credit to the Tolkien estate for not letting Hollywood get their hands on the Silmarillion, the Children of Hurin, the Fall of Gondolin, Beren and Luthien. All would be great stories that would make great movies or TV series. The only problem is there's no one in Hollywood who has the ability to adapt them. And that's a good thing, because I'm not excited for these two movies, obviously. I wish they weren't being made. So David Ellison, if you're listening, shut both of these movies down if you can, but if you can't, at least shut down the Stephen Colbert Lord of the Rings if you want to preserve Peter Jackson's legacy, because apparently he doesn't. Looks like we're a long way from this. Fire up the clip again, Garrett.
We didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honor Tolkien by putting his messages into it.
And for every win, there's a loss. Within the last 72 hours, Starfleet Academy was canceled. That's great. Unfortunately, it's only after its second season, and it still ruined Star Trek. And within the last 24 hours, we've gotten the reveal of Black Snape and the announcement of Stephen Colbert's Lord of the Rings. At this point, by the weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that Jimmy Kimmel's writing a Star Wars movie. And we'll end with a message to Hollywood, just in case you're wondering why your industry is cratering. Well, I'll give you one example. Stephen Colbert is writing a Lord of the Rings movie, an announcement that thankfully most everyone hates, proving that Hollywood will never leer.
Nerdrotic.com.
There's a thing, though. Not everybody hates it, and you can tell who the retards are. You really can. There's a bunch of people out there defending it, going like, "Oh, but Colbert is a fan of Tolkien." Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Anyway, shout out Gary from Nerdrotic. He's great. And let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. I have a huge chip on my shoulder about this, man. I have a huge chip on my shoulder about this.